Welcome to another episode of Ambitious Broker, and today's guest, a very interesting guy named Jimmy Burgess. You may have heard of him already. He is the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Beach Properties in Florida, 30-year veteran of the real estate business, and recently noted by Swainpool, which is one of the industry consultants, as one of the 200 most influential and powerful people in real estate business today. So a fellow that's got that designation has got to be someone with some thoughts that should be of interest to us. He's, again, 30-year veteran of the business. He has 25 years selling, running a team, and now an executive exclusively. So you'll also be interested perhaps in his YouTube channel, which we'll get into some discussion with him. But in any event, I want to introduce you to Jimmy Burgess, and enjoy this episode. Let's talk real quickly about some of your beginning. Now, I had contacted you because of an Inman article that you wrote, which I thought was pretty clever. I really did. And I'm anxious to see how much of this was originally yours if you're stealing stuff from people, because, don't tell me the truth, because I thought it was very clever, and I chased you down because of that. And it was an interesting way to deal with, what we've got to deal with today. I mean, you had a changing market. You've got a changing business model, really, with stuff that's coming down from NAR right now, and some of this stuff. And so it's an interesting time for people that have chosen real estate to be their profession. And so, and I find as I'm talking to people that I coach or consult with, and I watch others because I have a lot of respect for people like yourself. The video I saw with you of Tom Ferry, we just talked about Mike, meeting, with Mike not long ago. And everybody's got, everybody brings a little different perspective to stuff. And sometimes it's that different perspective that connects. You could say something, I could say something. We said the same damn thing, but, you smiled better or something. Something happened, your different angle. And I love the angle you took. So the article was basically some advice from 30 years, some brutal advice from 30 years. And as I've talked to other people and see a lot of the stuff going on there, I'll be honest with you, I keep saying, give me something new and original. Give me some ideas about how to approach this differently. Everybody comes back to work harder. And I just keep looking for more than that. But that said, they're all right.
Yeah.
You gotta work harder and not necessarily harder, but maybe smarter and so forth. So anyway, that's the reason I got attracted to you. Those are the things I'd like to go over with you today. But just before we do, give me a little background again. I know your family was in the business. Got you in?
Yeah, actually, when my parents got divorced when I was around 12 years old, my dad moved about 45 minutes to an hour away from where my mom lived with me and my brother, and he started a real estate company. Then my mom remarried, and she and my stepfather started a real estate company. So I kind of grew up around real estate my entire life. I always say I'm an SOB, son of brokers, really. And so from that standpoint, I kind of grew up around the business. I'd spend time with my dad. I'd play in the backyard during open houses. I would spend weekends actually riding around with my mom, prepping houses for showings and things. And so it was one of those where I just had said I would never get into real estate. And then after college, I started with Merrill Lynch and was the youngest stockbroker in the state of Florida. Oh. And my brother was graduating from college, and he said, "Hey, I think I'm gonna go home and start selling real estate with Mom. What do you think?" And I was like, I don't think this corporate environment's for me. And so it was perfect timing. And then he and I started selling, and it was great.
So you didn't start selling with Merrill Lynch real estate. You were with all the stockbrokers company.
It's an old ERA franchise back in the day.
Okay.
My mom had the ERA franchise. And so that's one of those things where I think that's been when you look in reverse, I know you can probably do this too. I look back and it was like, okay, well, I would watch my mom as the broker in a little small rural town with 6 or 7, and 2 of those being me and my brother, agents in the company. And every single Tuesday, she would have a sales meeting and she would prepare like she was speaking to 5,000 people. Right. And I learned the business from somebody that was very studious in teaching. And so I kind of had that ingrained in me. And now I got the privilege. I'll tell you this, Roger. I'm just kind of back up on this. I was speaking at the Berkshire Hathaway National Convention. I had my mom go this last year. She's 70. She's in her upper 70s now, and she's been retired for a number of years. And standing in this room full of people that are there to hear me speak. And I had the opportunity to stand up and say, hey, listen, where I'm from, honor's not truly given unless it is spoken. And I told that story about her doing those sales meetings every week. And I said, listen, if you've ever seen one of my videos, read one of my articles, or I've ever given any value to your business in any way, you need to come up and thank my mom when this is over, because every single bit of what I have and what I know and what I learned on how to learn and how to present comes from her. And it was one of the coolest, funnest highlights of my career that I've ever had, to watch that, have the ability to stand up publicly. And I've had a chance to do that now twice with her in pretty sizable rooms. And
that's very
nice. I think it may be the career, you know what I mean, is actually giving back to somebody who just gave so much to me. So yeah, that was pretty fun. But so that led to my brother and I. This is back when teams were just starting. So he and I, with his wife as our assistant, basically we did 119 transactions in a year, like my fourth year in the business. And so we were off and running. And so that kind of just built, the reps, I guess you could say, right, at an early time for us. And then, we went through the downturn, and just like a lot of people, everything that goes up very quickly, like it did for me, 2003 to 5, everything can come down very quickly. And I suffered, immensely in that, learned a lot of lessons. And now looking back, it's probably the best thing ever happened to me. I wouldn't have believed it then, because it shaped me and taught me what was truly important, which was those relationships I had. It was those folks that I had the opportunity to work with. It was not the stuff, but the people. And so on the other side of that, coming through that, I just had a new focus on really serving people at a new and a higher level. 6 years ago, I shifted out of sales and left my team and came into the executive side of this. We were purchased by Home Services now 2.5 years ago. And I think you and I were talking about this before. Gino Bafari has been a tremendous, mentor, friend, older brother to me. And so that's kind of where we are now. We're now with a company of around 270 agents that I'm the CEO for. And we have had our average agent at the peak, it's off a little bit right now. I haven't done that since last year, was averaging $8.5 million in sales volume. And so we've really, one of the biggest things I was proud of is how the agents moved from our average agent doing $2.5 million to $8.5 million over a couple year period. The market helped some, but obviously those agents.
In my opinion, that's the mark you want. You want to see your agents grow, and if they grow. And it's funny because the industry in the last 20 years probably has really, you've seen a swing from a broker's owner standpoint of where it's easier to add people than it is to help people get better. And it's had a big impact,
No, I think that's what's been funnest. That's the thing that I love the most is, I keep those statistics. So I think whether you're a brokerage or someone else, it's finding and identifying who is it that is your ideal person that you help the most. And listen, I mean, because I've been a team leader, we've done, had some big years. I've done a ton of transactions. I feel like I can help everybody, but I'll tell you, and I think brokerages sometimes try to get everybody to join their brokerage, or agents want to build teams and they just want to get as many people. But in reality, it's finding, and I think agents do this where they just want to do every deal, when in reality, if we niche down and find who it is that we can serve at the highest level, whether that's an agent that is great with first-time home buyers, investors, second homes, luxury, whatever it is, whatever your expertise is if you can focus in on that group. So what we did is we found that as we tracked all the numbers, because you got to track your numbers, and we found that the agents that were between $2 and $8 million in production that joined our company and plugged into the training that we had, that 72% of them within 14 months doubled their business. And so it was like, okay, that's the group that I'm just really able to help a ton. Of course, I can help a team leader. I've been there. But a lot of times, they're doing a lot of the learning on their own, and they've done enough reps that they don't need near as much help. So that's kind of what we've tried to focus on. And I think
that's interesting, because that's exactly was my mindset when I started my company. And it was, you're doing X amount of business, whether it be 10, 12 deals a year. And what I want to do is I want to show you how to get to 30 or 40 or 20 or what, something. And my rule is always, you got to have a goal. There's one of the things I talk about when I'm talking to owners of company is that, I have a bunch of rules around management, rules around selling. And one of them is that you can't solve a problem someone doesn't have. So if you don't have a goal, it's hard for me to reach my goal, and so.
And it's the same thing like with me when I'm sitting with agents, it's like, hey, if you'll just get clarity and you can specifically tell me how much income you want, what you want your average sales price to be, how many transactions you need to get to that goal, whatever it is. If you'll just tell me that, I can backfill the activities to get you there. This is an if in business. If you do certain things, then you can expect certain results. And so I think that's the problem is that sometimes we just kind of, a lot of times as agents, a lot of agents will just kind of go through the motions and they're waiting on things to happen instead of making things happen.
Right.
And
I agree.
And I will say this, I think we're at a point in this business, I've been doing this 30 years now, where I've never been more excited about the opportunities that this business provides for professional agents. I broke it down literally about 2 hours ago, where I saw the statistic where 60,000 agents have come out of the business in the first 6 months of this year.
Right.
When I broke that down, that means when I break it down all the way down to the time period, that means basically about every 8 minutes, every 4 minutes, 4 minutes, agents leaving the business.
Yeah.
Now, if you're a pro, what you have to understand is that this thing happens in cycles. And so whether we're at the bottom, and we always know this, spring always comes after winter. So if this is the winter of the business, lower transactions, it's a little bit more difficult. There's change happening. We do know this, some winters are longer and they're colder. Some are shorter and milder. It's really, where we are right now, it's hard to tell. Are we at the bottom or are we kind of coming out of this? It just depends on where you are in the country. But I do know this, this too shall pass, and we will see an upturn in this business again. And the folks that are being professional now and that are building and setting the table, there is less competition that is happening by the minute. Right. There's less competition. There's more opportunity. And as we see this continue, probably, especially into this fall, as we have the changes with everything, some people just can't adapt. And from that standpoint, I think if you're a professional agent, you want to be really excited about what this business and what the opportunities are going to be, not just now, but especially when we get some tailwinds.
I'm really excited to hear you say that as one of the 200 most influential people in real estate right now, according to Swainpool. I think it's important that message gets sent out there because the industry in general has to get back to not saying that we're professional, being professional. And if anybody wants to be really fair and honest, we haven't gotten away from saying it, but we've certainly gotten away from being it. And I think we've got to really reel that back in. And to your point, it's a perfect opportunity for that right now. Perfect opportunity.
Yeah. And listen, Roger, the market's going to do it for us in a lot of ways, because those folks that cannot, this is, I always talk, people they'll complain about these changes. They'll complain about the North settlement. First off, I don't want to complain about something that I can't affect.
Right.
So what I want to do is I want to talk about what I'm excited about this. And what I am excited about with this is that there is going to be more transparency. And listen, professional agents are always transparent. We sit down and we go through what to expect. We talk about, the process, the negotiation, the inspection. We do all that previously. We also, if you're looking at this, have to understand that if you can't communicate your value, you're not going to be able to do business. That was not the case for the pandemic. It was just catch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now it's from where you've got to not only be able to communicate it, but you've got to be able to communicate it with conviction that you're going to bring so much value to this person that they would be crazy not to want to work with you. And so that's one of those things where if you're truly a professional, and if you aren't, look, there's still time. That's the beauty of this. There's time. If you're struggling right now and you're scared about this, the best way to get over your fear of what's to come is to prepare for it.
Right.
And those that are prepared, those that are studying this, those that are out there doing the business, when you're out there and you start building momentum and you take action, it builds your confidence. When your confidence is up, you act differently.
Yeah.
When you act differently, you do differently. And so consequently, it is a process to do this. But the professional agent right now has more value than they had 2 years ago. So you just have to be able to communicate that in a way.
I just saw,
and you should be
I'm sorry, go ahead.
excited.
I just saw,
No, I was just going to say excited about it.
I just saw a documentary the other day about a lady named Shakara Richardson, who's the fastest woman in the world right now. She'll be on the U.S. Olympic team. And she had a great line. She goes, I know that I've got to look good so that I can feel good so that I can perform good. And so it starts with putting her lipstick on. I mean, the connection between running a 100-meter sprint and putting your lipstick on seems to be pretty remote. Yet she's connected it, so it's kind of what you're saying.
Hey, I'm from Florida and grew up when and Deion Sanders is a couple years older than me, but so he was one of these that I watched when he was in college, create primetime. And he had a great quote too. He said, look good, feel good, play good. They pay really good. And it's absolutely true. I mean, it does start with everything. This is the thing that I think happens sometimes is like, I don't know how that affects everything. Everything affects everything. Your confidence by, getting up and being healthy in the morning. Look, the first thing we do in the morning is we get in there and we brush our teeth and we look into the mirror and you either think, okay, it doesn't even matter what you look like. I'm getting stronger.
Yeah.
I'm getting better physically.
Yeah.
Or it's, man,
you get to my age and that looking in the mirror is hard. You got to wake up every day and go, I'm getting older,
but listen, the thing is like for me, I mean, obviously, I look in the mirror and I'm like, where did my hair go? What happened? How did I become the old guy? But I still wake up this morning and I say, I'm brushing my teeth and I'm like, hey, look, I may not look
still got my teeth,
but I still got my teeth and I'm headed to this gym to be the best that I can possibly be. And that then spills over to my energy the entire day. It spills over to everything. Right. So I think sometimes we forget this little things do make a huge difference.
Yeah, they really do.
Once they're,
I got one thing, and that I want to jump into your brutal advice, and then we got some conversation after that as well. It's kind of interesting. I don't know if you're aware of this or not. You probably are, but you started at Berkshire at Merrill Lynch, and do you know you went full circle?
Yeah. I was at the Berkshire convention, the shareholders meeting last year.
Yeah.
So yes, I am. It is. It's interesting to see how all that is.
Well, so people who don't know, Berkshire, Merrill Lynch had created probably the only really nationwide company in real estate, and then they ended up selling it to Prudential. Prudential trying to franchise, which ultimately, they did a nice job. Prudential did a really good job, broke the country up into regions, and then Berkshire Hathaway bought them. So
that's right.
Now they're back around to you again. So I lived through a lot of that, knew some of those guys in those days, and it was kind of interesting. So anyway, welcome back. Welcome back home to you again, I guess. So here's the thing. You had an article that said you're going to give some really brutal advice from your 30 years in the real estate business. And I loved your perspective on it. So let's start with it. Now, I saw a video, and the video had a little different numbering sequence, I think, to these things, which is irrelevant. But I know the first one was acting like a cat. So your brutally honest advice to people starts with be a cat.
Yeah, well, it's be an outdoor cat. I grew up in the country.
Yeah.
And so, Roger, this was actually, I want to give credit where credit's due. A good friend of mine, actually, I was on the phone with him for about an hour this morning, out of Baltimore, Maryland. We were talking about this, and what he said, it's Andrew Undum, by the way. What he said was, I'd heard him one time say, hey, listen, for his team, you know what he wants? He wants outdoor cats. He don't want any indoor cats. And if you think about what's an outdoor cat wakes up every day. Outdoor cat knows that nobody's going to feed him. Outdoor cat realizes if I'm hungry this morning and I'm going to eat, I got to go kill something so that I can eat. Indoor cat sits inside and waits on somebody to come home and feed him.
Right.
Indoor cat comes in, and the second that somebody shows them attention, they just kind of, they almost like act like they don't want their attention. An outdoor cat makes things happen. And so when I was talking about this, I was like, look, I want to be around outdoor cats. I want to be around people that don't wait on things and they don't react to things, but they make things around them react to them. That they go out and they take action in a way that they're not going to just sit back. This was the problem during the pandemic is the business was so good that sometimes what can happen is it's just like anything else. If you don't work out or you don't do certain things, you're going to have muscle atrophy.
Yep.
Well, when you have a market like we had where it was just literally coming at us so fast and all you had to do was just catch it and just try to hang on because there's so much business coming at you, then you forget how to market. You forget how to negotiate as well as you possibly did in the past. Forget how to service clients. You forget how to follow up after the sale to build relationship. And so where we are right now is we're at a place where you have to begin to understand that what you did in the past is not going to get you where you want to be in the future. So what is it that you're going to do to not wait on it to happen, not wait on somebody to feed you or call you to ask you to go show them property? What is it you're going to do to get up and make that happen in a way like an outdoor cat, I guess you could say? That was just the analogy I used. In a way that you're not just sitting around, because you have to understand we are in a business where, listen, if you want to eat, you got to go sell something. And so what does that look like? And it's different for everybody, whatever that is.
You said easy equals lazy. And,
that's it.
And I can remember, in my 20-some year of building and running my real estate company, one of the things that was interesting, every time the market got really good, you would see people fall off the basics. It just got too easy. And I remember having conversations with agents saying, you got to get back. I know you're doing good. But you got to get back on track to some of this fundamental stuff because it doesn't always stay this way. And I would even have agents go, gosh, he's never happy, with what we do. It's like, and it's like, I'm going to be here in 20, 30 years. I want you to be here in 20, 30 years.
That's right.
Get back on track.
That's it. Yeah. And listen, I think I had a personal coach of mine, who was a great guy, a great friend to me. That was, actually, he was in the original class at Alabama under Bear Bryant. And he ended up becoming a graduate assistant. After he left, and they had won a national championship. He was his offensive coordinator. He went on, Jimmy Sharp was his name. He went on to be coach at Virginia Tech. He was in real estate in our area when I first started kind of growing up. I hired him in like 2003 to coach me personally. And one of the things that I found really interesting that he did is that there would be times when he would be tough on me and say, what are you doing? You know what I mean? And then there would be times where he would be like, give yourself some grace, get back in the fight. You're fine. You're doing great. And I asked him one time, I was like, why are you sometimes this way? And he said, my job is that if you get too cold, then I need to warm you up. If you get too hot, I need to cool you down. So the key is having some of those people around you, whether it's a coach, whether it's a mentor, whether it is other agents in a mastermind group. Listen, even the Lone Ranger had Tonto. You got to have somebody around you to actually help you and be able to see things for you. And I think what happens too sometimes when we get in markets like this is, this is not war, but let me give you that analogy, is the first thing that an enemy does when they start in a battle is they try to knock out communications. They fly in and they just bomb all the communications because what they want is they want to have the actual soldier that's on the battlefield, not to have the eyes in the sky saying, hey, look out to the left. Right. Hey, opportunity to the right. Hey, move right. And I think what happens for us as agents sometimes is that we do the worst thing we could do, which is we isolate ourselves. Having somebody that can see things outside of you is so critically important. So, when we're talking about this, where are agents? Where are the opportunities for agents right now? Hey, listen, you want to be in the room with the people that have either done or are doing what you want to do.
Yes.
So find those places, find those companies, find those mastermind groups, find the coaches, and surround yourself with the right people. And you're going to move in that direction.
I coached high school football and some low-level college, junior college football. And one of the things that was always interesting to me was that in the world of coaching anything, we spent so much time focused on watching film and trying to find our problems and fixing problems. And so I brought that same mentality into, my business of real estate. And I always found it interesting that we spent so much disproportionate amount of time focusing and thinking about things we don't do well. And I've noticed in real estate that those who had trouble with their self-esteem, if I'm spending 80% of my time trying to think about the bad things, it can really have an issue on your self-esteem. So to your point, having a guy around you who says, cool off, come back, easy does it, is just really critical. And I think in the real estate brokerage business, to anybody who owns a company today and is trying to manage or coach, getting close enough to people to feel that moment when you got to cool down, and you. So if you don't have that company, you've got to have that person who says, cool down, Jimmy, or kick it back up again, or it's just someone to be honest with you.
Yeah. You know what I found, Roger, after being around so many agents, and I find the times when I was most successful in my business is there's three real characteristics that I see in those folks that are really moving to another level or that have moved to that other level. The first one is humble. And what I mean by humble is that they're confident who they are, but they're humble enough to know that they don't know everything. Right. They're humble enough to ask for help. Right. They're humble enough to continue to learn, even when it feels like maybe they've learned a lot. The second trait is hungry. And when I'm talking about hungry, I'm not talking about hungry because they don't have any money. I'm talking about hungry to learn, hungry to get better, hungry to serve others. Somebody that is at a place where they really are desiring to become a better at their craft. They're just hungry to become who they are supposed to be. Right. And then the last one is coachable. And the coachable really is having those traits where you are at a place where you understand that there are people that can assist you and you're willing to listen to them. It's putting the right people around you. It's having that mentality of what is it that I can do or learn and who can teach me that so that I can be around that in a way that's going to get me. I always say this, I want to have people around me that, and this is something I'd heard someone say years ago was, I want to have people around me that know me, KNOW, me well enough to know me, N-O me. So they know me well enough to know when I'm getting off track. And I know them well enough to know that when they N-O me, they know me and they say, yeah, I wouldn't do that. Yeah, they're coming from a place really know who I am, and also with a heart to make me a better version of who I am and who I'm supposed to be.
That's great. I love that line, actually. Very, very good. Number two, I think, in your list.
We're already just up. I know. I'm sorry. I'm moving really slowly.
No. Listen, I got all the time in the world. It's your time I worry about. But number two was shut mouths don't get fed.
Yeah. I'll give you a story on this, Roger. Is that we were having this great dinner with a few agent friends of mine, one from Chattanooga, one from Baton Rouge, that are big team leaders. Both teams are doing, a couple 300 transactions a year. They were staying down here at the beach. We had this great dinner. The one from Louisiana actually had a friend of his with him who's in the insurance business. His name is Charlie Causey. And Charlie just kind of was sitting back, just listening to us talk about real estate business. And he's just quietly listening and sipping on his after dinner drink. And after we were all fired up about everything, he said, "Let me tell you boys something." And I said, "Oh gosh, this is going to be good." He had that little South Louisiana in him. And he said, "Y'all, I'm going to tell you what I tell." I think he has a couple hundred, insurance agents. He said, "Y'all see this phone right here?" He said, let me show you what I tell my people is. He said, "That phone right there sitting down on the table, you know what that is? That's broke. You know what this is? Rich. Broke, rich. Broke, rich. If you're not talking to people, nothing's happening. And so this is a contact sport. And the more people that you communicate with, and the more you communicate value, because it's changed, from when it was all phones when I started. Now it could be video. It could be, I've got a 24-year-old agent here that sold $7 million just in January from YouTube. And the thing is he doesn't make a lot of outbound calls because now after 14 months and doing a video a week, specifically on neighborhoods, specifically speaking to an ideal client of his, where it's almost like a dog whistle type of marketing, where the only person that hears it is the person who's supposed to. And he has literally got 10 hours a day of watch time on YouTube. So he's got passive prospecting. So he's communicating with people for 10 hours a day, even though he's not on the phone. Right. But the bottom line of all this is, if you're not talking, you're not going to be having sales. Right. Sales don't happen through drip campaigns.
Right.
Sales don't happen by just having somebody in a funnel. They happen by you understanding the needs, providing that value in a way, and helping them get across the finish line to get what they ultimately want.
I think you just mentioned video, and this is year 50 for me. So I've seen it from pre-cell phone and so forth, and I think through all those years. And by the way, I'm a huge computer guy. I started in the 80s building computers. I wrote the first CRM system in the real estate industry and first office management. And so I've done I'm a big technology guy. I love it. I love the pursuit of being better at things in general. And I think of all those years and all those things, I still think today, even more than computers in general, that this video revolution is probably the most significant opportunity ever in my entire time in real estate. Not even close.
It's not even close. Yeah, no,
because
it's not.
To your point,
Roger,
go ahead.
No, I mean, I was just going to say that I'm a perfect example of this. I'm not doing anything differently than I did 10 years ago. But 5 years ago, I started putting a video a week out on how to help agents. I had to figure it out. People don't have to figure it out now. I mean, you can go on YouTube and say, how do I start a YouTube channel? And it'll tell you. I had to figure all that stuff out. I did 72 videos, 14 months before I got my first 100 subscribers.
Wow.
And now I'm sitting here with adding 1,000 subscribers a month right now. And it's one of those where it's just the consistency. And so I went back and looked. And so when we're talking about agents building personal brands, and, a lot of agents say, well, I don't want to make phone calls. I don't like to make phone calls. First, if you got to make them at some point. But if you're looking to build it where you don't have to, and you want to attract clients instead of chasing them, video is the answer. I mean, it is absolutely the answer. So for me, I looked at this a couple of days ago. I had a friend of mine that was asking me about my channel. I said, and now with analytics on the back end of, because of, how many people I've got, YouTube tells me, that how many hours people are watching on a daily basis.
Right.
And I told him, he had asked that question. I told him, and he said, Jimmy, what you don't understand is he said, let's break this down. He said, basically what you're telling me is right now, every live second that's happening, somebody's watching 8 seconds of your videos. And he said, think of the value of that to an agent. Think of the value of marketing themselves. It's one thing. I can only be on the phone with so many people if I'm an agent.
Right.
But if I've got a video and you get to a point where you've got every 2 seconds somebody's watching your video, it's like you've cloned yourself twice and you're just letting the clones do the work. You know what I mean? And you're sitting there.
I know from watching one of your videos that you're a big believer in geographic farming still. And
absolutely.
I still am a huge believer in that. I think with the new tools, you can do it better, more efficiently and so forth. But the value of going door to door and meeting with people and doing it in the same area over and over was an opportunity for a person to get to know you. And video is just a chance for people to get to know you, get a sense of who you are, what your energy is, stuff that you don't get from a mail piece, or, even anything that's static is not going to give you a sense of who I am. But when I knock on that door and you feel my personality, you feel who I am, the chances of remembering me, the chances of liking me all go up a lot. And that's the business we're in.
Yeah. And video is a natural filter. Let's be real. I mean, there's certain people that hear me and they're like, wow, he talks really fast and that accent bothers me or whatever it is. We've all got people that's not our people. I call them OKPs. We want our kind of people. Who is it that I'm supposed to serve? Well, what video does is somebody either sees a video and says, no, not my person. Well, let me tell you what that just did. That saved me a lot of headaches and a lot of time of us just, being like this with somebody that I should be working with.
Absolutely.
And then there's people, that's my guy. I can work with him or I can work with her. And video does that on a natural basis for you. So it's not even that it just gets you more business. It gets you the right business.
Yeah, filters stuff out.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs had a great line, and it was that great brands naturally repel people or attract people.
That's right.
That's what a great brand does. And that's what, when I first started, people would say, do you think being young hurt you? Because I started at 20 years old. I looked 12, honestly, I didn't even shave regularly at the time. And so I would have people make fun of how young I looked. And did it cost you anything? And I go, I don't know. I was the top income producer in Southern California for Coldwell Banker. So I guess it didn't hurt, and the truth of the matter is, I'm sure a lot of people didn't want to do business with me. It just didn't matter because all I cared about was your point. Who do you connect with? And I got to find those people, right?
Yeah. And I mean, it depends on the market. I have agents that come in and, they'll say, well, it just seems like there's not a lot of business. I'm like, hey, listen, and this little market we're in, which has grown dramatically, you're talking about, I'm just going to use just a small segment of this, over $2 billion worth of sales volume in just a little small couple mile radius here,
right.
Either side of me. Well, when you start figuring on that, and there's two sides of that. So the knowledge of, you're talking about $4 billion. You telling me we can't go get 20 million of that? I mean, come on. I mean, just literally, there are people in every single market that are looking for what you have. Going back to the, shut mouths don't get fed, but do they know that you exist? Do they know what you specialize in? Because until they know it, they can't find you. Right. And so absolutely it's getting out there, and however you do that, whether that's door knocking, whether that's making phone calls, the way that you and I did it when we started, whether that is doing it through video, whether it's short form video on social media, whatever it is, you have to have people that you're communicating with in order to be able to find opportunities.
Right. So to wrap up this little shut mouths don't get fed, the most conversations win. The most business conversation win is what I heard you say. Great line. Yeah. Great line.
Yeah. And listen, I think everybody, if you really want to get good, start counting your conversations to the transactions. Industry averages have always said it's around 50 real estate related conversations generates one transaction. Right. Now, if you only do 100 calls, it's not going to be enough. But if you start tracking that number and you start understanding that, hey, for me, every 41 calls, I get a transaction and conversation I have, all of a sudden you're now like, okay, I want to have a transaction a week. Okay. Well, then we need to have 41 real estate related conversations every week. Well, what is that? It's 8 a day, 5 days a week. Right. I mean, it is a science. There's an art to the science, but it is a science once you know your numbers. And you're absolutely right. I'll promise you, I've watched our agents, and our top producing agent right now, she has the most conversations real estate related of anybody else in this company every single day.
Just converts.
And that's why yeah. And then you've got a newer agent that comes in and is working on their logo.
Right.
It's irrelevant. You know what I mean? Nobody cares what your logo is. They want to know what value you bring to them, or how are you communicating what's going on to them in a way that benefits them. Yep. So I just think that if you're only going to focus on one thing, count your conversations and have more of those. It's pretty basic.
It's an interesting coaching thing that you kind of bring up there, and I kind of picked this up. I don't know, maybe 7-8 years into it, 9 years into running my business, and that was that I'm a big numbers guy too. Always believed in it. Always did it. It was just instinctive with me. But what happened was I call insecurity the cancer of real estate people, and what happens is the first thing that you have to attack when you get in the business, in my opinion, is go after this insecurity. Get secure with what you do. And you get secure through your numbers. What I found out was, they would always say, you knock on 100 doors, you get one lead, and so many leads, you get, so many deals and so forth. And that could all well be true. But I mean, as a guy who watched a lot of football film, I'm sitting here going, who's keeping those stats? Because I don't know anyone who asks people those numbers, So I didn't believe it. There was no credibility in any of those numbers. When it's your number and you count them and you say, this is what my numbers are, X number, because this is what I do, it becomes real and it becomes believable. And when I can then duplicate that the time I do it the second time and duplicate what I did the first time or better is when I suddenly believe. And when I believe, all the insecurity goes away, and suddenly you own your business. You build a career at that moment in time. And I think farming, as an example, geographical farming was a really big lesson to me, and I'll explain it to you later. But so I'm still a numbers guy. Get secure.
Yeah, me too.
Get secure.
Me too.
Let's go on with you are reaping what you sowed. Give me some harsh news there.
Yeah, listen, I mean, if you don't have a transaction this month, it's not based on what you did this month. It's what you were doing, based on when we're doing this 3 months ago, 60 days ago, because this is a business where, me growing up rurally on a farm, we would have been crazy for us to think we're going to go plant seeds this spring and tomorrow we're going to harvest that. And it's the same way in real estate.
Yeah.
I don't have anything going on. I'm going to go call all day and I'll have something by the end of the day.
Yes.
Well, you may have a contract, you may have a potential listing, you may have a showing, but to get paid on that, it takes time.
Yeah.
It is a natural maturing process. So if we're in a real estate business that is based on, planting, nurturing, weathering storms, pulling weeds, then harvest, you can't skip the steps. I mean, and so you have to understand that if you're not where you want to be right now, you can't change that. What you can change is where you're going to be 30, 60, 90 days from now. And I'll go back to what you said. I've always said competence breeds confidence. The days when I see an agent in here and I'm looking out one of the lights in one of our little call center booths outside this office, when I see that light on and I see that person they're making these calls today, I will pop by and I'll say, hey, listen, it's going to be a really good fall for you. If you do this every day, it's going to be a really good fall for you.
Right.
And you have to understand and know and trust that the things you're doing today are going to reap a harvest in the future. And that's what I was talking about is that, if you're not getting the results you want, it's not based on what you did today. It's based on what you haven't.
That's the coaching point there too, is that gap, the gap between, I've convinced you, go knock on doors, go build a farm, and you do it for 3 or 4 months and nothing happens, to not retain the patience, the belief in that, that methodology. I tell a story. I have the very first salesperson I ever hired was a guy named Stephen Noel, and he came to work for us, and I was a big farmer personally. It's the way I built, my business. And so, when I started my company, it was all farm, everybody farm. And so he did. And he was 18 months farming before he ever got his first deal. 18 months. Mm-hmm. And I always say to people, how in the world do you do anything for 18 months and keep failing and keep doing it? And that little mental thing right there, when in his case, there was myself and a bunch of others in the office who were doing pretty well with it. And so he knew that others were doing it. So now it was only convincing him that, he isn't the unicorn. He's not the one that's not going to make it work. Well, short version of the story is we talk all the time. He started work for me in 1978, and I talked to him yesterday as an example. He moved to Colorado 30 years ago, 25 years ago, something like that. And he went there. He started doing the same thing there. He goes, nobody does that here. It's made it easy for me, right? But so he went there, took on farming. Well, he's worked for Remax. He made $1 million a year for over 20 consecutive years. And so I tell him all the time, you owe $30 million of income to me because I didn't let you stop 12 months or 18 months. That's a really important moment to get through.
Yeah. And I think it's also, when you stay consistent with it, you don't even realize because sometimes it's not really visible. You're getting better. So it's crazy to think that the first mailer you do to your farm is going to be the best mailer you send. You're going to understand which mailer they respond to. And so 6 months later, you're going to model something after that and it's going to do better. So it's just like, you have to understand, it's like the phone calls. The more phone calls I make, the lower the number of real estate related conversations to my actual transaction goes up, because I begin to understand how to have those conversations. Right. I begin to identify needs faster. I begin to understand how to answer questions in a way that brings clarity quicker, so that it brings the understanding of the value I bring. So all of those things, it's not just the time, it's the amount of reps that you're taking, because you don't even realize, but every single time you do an action, it's refining you to get better at that action. So what are you doing? It's just, it's simple. Like like you coaching football, it's the blocking and tackling. You know what I mean? It's the fundamentals. Yeah. It's the positioning that every time I learn something that I can then apply next time. So
listen, you want to you want to stay conscious through that process where you're not on autopilot and you're just doing it through memory. Your point is, I think, well taken, that you do it, but you do it with the idea that what am I going to learn from this moment? I say something at maybe at a door, knocking on a door, and then when I walk away from that, what am I thinking about? How'd that go? How'd I do? What'd I say? What could have I said differently? So that you stay in the moment and conscious about this idea that I'm trying to get better.
Yeah, Roger, I've got a good friend of mine that was with 7th Special Forces Group that's in our area at Eglin Air Force Base. And I just wondered about their process a lot. I really, looked to see, what it was they did that made them so special. And one of the things that he talked about is that he says after every single day that they practiced and every single mission, they had a mandatory hour to 2 hour meeting where they debriefed. And they evaluated what they did well, what they could do better, and what they might do differently. Right. And I think sometimes what happens for us is that we just keep going through the motions and we don't improve because we don't go back and look and see what it is. So I think it is important to not just do the reps, but to I encourage our agents to journal what it is that you did on a daily basis. What were the activities? What were the results? What worked? What didn't? What do you wish you would have done differently?
Exactly.
So
my original group, we would meet. There'd be 10 of us, 8, 9, 10 of us who were consistent farmers. And what we would do is we'd always door knock at the same time, and we would meet before, do a little huddle, little high five, chest bumping, and then we would go out door knocking. And then our deal was we always came back and we met at a restaurant bar, and we called it debriefing. It took the form of beer and vodka tonics, but it was definitely debriefing. And we talked about it, how it went and so forth. Yeah. Okay. So the markets, number 4 was the market's tough and you're playing soft.
Yeah. Listen, we can't control the market, but we can control how we react to it. And what I see is that a lot of times, when things get tough, people do one of 3 things. They either flee. We see that. I just mentioned that 8 seconds or 8 minutes every 8 minutes, somebody's getting out of business. They either flee, or they freeze. We're seeing a lot of agents that they aren't sure what to do. So they're just doing nothing, which is the worst. That's the squirrel in the middle of the road trying to figure out which way to go that gets run over. And then there's the people, then they fight. So what is it that you're going to do to actually come in there and, not talk about how bad the market is? Because I think we can all agree somebody's going to have their best year ever. The question is it going to be you? And so what will you do? Are you going to, I'll tell you what's not going to get you any more business: complaining that it's more difficult in the market right now. It is absolutely not going to get you more business. What's going to get you more business is taking action and doing some of the things, trying new things, studying what other agents are doing right now. This is why I try to stay around younger or newer agents in the business, because I don't want to get caught in this rut of that. I've never done it that way before. Right. I want to see what's working right now. So, if I can encourage you to figure out what that is, notice the agents that are having their business grow rapidly right now. They could have been in the business for a while. They could be a newer agent that's just having some early success. What is it that they're doing? Because odds are they're either doing a lot of what works, that has always worked, or they're doing new, fresh things, or doing things in a fresh, new way that has an opportunity for you to adjust to. Be observant. Be observant of what those things are. Model your business after those that are doing what you want to do, and you're going to see those results as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I don't know, I think you used the word grit. Did you use the word grit? Have you used that word? Because I think I
always use it.
And that really rung a bell, because there's a lady named Angela Lee Duckworth. I don't know if you've ever heard of her or not, but she did a TED Talk. And it was an interesting TED Talk about, she was an academic, and then she became a teacher, and she started teaching kids. And the bottom line of her study was that she found out that her students that did best had very, very little to do with how smart they were. And she called it grit. And the whole YouTube video is about grit and how grit becomes, more important than intelligence, more important than anything, your background, your history, your social. So I found that really interesting. And as I've gone through the years, And I really noticed it doing my this podcast, because we've had some of the top people in the country. Do you know Andrew Manning? He's a Berkshire Hathaway guy out of California. One of the
boy, name rings a bell, but I don't know for sure.
Well, he's one of the top guys in the country. He's a huge producer, and he has been for a long time. Stephanie Vitacco, #1 lady, and with Keller Williams and so forth, a bunch of top Remax people and so forth. And the one thing that I've learned, that my takeaway from a lot of this is, boy, if you're a competitor, you really got hands up on people. Every one of those people were fierce competitors. Right. So to your point, grit, they attack it, want to go attack it, want to go win. And, but you bring that attitude with the conversation and so forth, it's going to do really well. Neighborhood expert. Rod, go ahead.
I'll give you one story on that. When I was 23 and when I was 22, started working at Merrill Lynch. I had I'm a Southern guy. I had the mentor I had there at Merrill Lynch was a guy that was from New Jersey, and he, pretty direct. And, I came in there the second day, and he walks in there and he says, "Hey, Jimmy, I want to see you." I go in his office, and he's holding this key. He said, "Hey, Jimmy, this is your key to the front door." He said, "And I'm going to be honest with you, you're not going to be the smartest one here." And I'm kind of harsh, but it's true. I mean, I'm 22 trying to get financial advice. I mean, let's be real. But he said, "But I'll tell you this right here." He said, "This key right here, your key, if it'll be the one that turns those locks and unlocks it, and you're the first one here in the morning. And if this key right here is the one that turns those locks and is the last one to leave, everything else is going to take care of itself." Right. And literally to this day, when I walk in this office in the mornings or in the evenings when I leave and I turn those locks, still to this day, I think in my head, I may not be the smartest one here, but they ain't going to outwork me. And I mean, I still go back to a little bit of grit of, no matter what amount of success or, that I've had, I'm not going to lose that edge of being the hardest working one in the room, or that grit that no matter what happens, I'm not going to forget those times when, when the market turned and I lost everything and had to start over, that I was able to do it. I'm going to continue to operate from a place that whatever this world throws at us, because listen, let's be real, it's going to throw stuff at you. Sure. My grandfather was a pastor. He said it this way. He said, "Look, if you'll treat everybody like they're hurting, you're going to be right about 90% of the time. We all got stuff." Yes. It's a matter of how are you going to deal with that stuff?
Right.
And I think those folks that have the grit to keep going when they don't want to, those folks are going to be the ones that you're going to see continuously have success time and time again. Bottom line is winners win. Winners are going to win no matter what the market does. And unfortunately or fortunately, losers lose. And so you've got to get a mentality that I'm a winner. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And when you've got that mentality and you take the action based on that confidence that you're going to win no matter what, you're going to win every single time.
Yeah. Harsh, but brutally honest. I always said, I'm the tortoise, not the hare. I'm just going to keep moving, slow and consistent. And like you said, outwork everybody. All right, let's get into the neighborhood expert thing. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, what I said in the article is that in the video was basically that if you're not an expert, known as the expert in a specific area, you're not an expert. And this goes back to geographical farming. How many people view you as the expert on their neighborhood? Because the more people that do that, the more that you're going to have success. And that doesn't happen overnight. That comes through consistency. That comes from, you can do it to a certain extent with direct mail. You can do it to a certain extent with with calling people or circle prospecting, or from, going out and door knocking. But those folks that truly are known as the expert, they're like, "Man, I see you everywhere." Right. They see you in the neighborhood. I was on the phone with a friend of mine, Glenda Baker, yesterday, and we were talking about this. When she started 30 years ago, she was living she was a single mom living in an apartment in Atlanta. And what she did is she became the expert on a luxury neighborhood while she was still living in an apartment as a single mom. And what she did is she studied that market. She knew it like nobody else. And in the afternoon, she would go over there and she would push that stroller with that baby in that neighborhood. And she'd say, "Hey to everybody." And they're like, they see her everywhere. And then she was sending the mail. And then when the opportunity came, she was ready for it. So if you're at a place where you want to be known as the expert, let them see you everywhere. Take your afternoon walks or your morning walks in that neighborhood. Be the person that's knocking on the door, hosting more open houses in that neighborhood than anybody else. Even if it's not your listing, ask if you can host. The person that is sending more direct mail, that is talking to those folks more, that is sponsoring the HOA gathering or providing lunch for it or whatever. Just get active, because the more that you are present, the more that they're going to see you as that expert and that person that's always there. And that's where the foundation, just like we talked about, that's the foundation of every great business I know of, is that they have specific areas that they geographically farm that they are known as that expert.
Well, boy, I really agree with that a lot. And, there's an intellectual part of this too. And that is that, you only have limited resource, time, money, and so forth as an individual agent. For you to try to, be everything to all people across the 2 million person metropolis someplace, some large city, is insane. Large companies can't afford to do it.
Yeah.
You can't afford to focus in on 1,000 homes or 2,000 homes or whatever, and you can become very, very famous. You can become a celebrity in that area.
Yeah.
And that's what makes you money. You cannot afford to do it in large areas. I don't know about where you're at, but in Los Angeles now, the multiple listing service here covers half of California now. And as a result of it, I've noticed that agents really travel a long way to do business. I mean, they'll travel 70 miles to go down from say San Fernando Valley down to Newport Beach to do a real estate transaction. So impractical, and yet they do it, but they're only doing a couple sales a year, because so they
Right.
bite on like a pit bull and chase a person down. And so, I'm when I saw you say that in your video, I go, yeah, I'm 100% with you on that one. You've got to keep in mind what resources do I have to play with, right? You're brand new in the business. You probably don't have a lot of money to throw at stuff, So, okay, market doesn't care.
Yes.
Item number 6. Market doesn't care.
Yeah. I mean, listen, and ultimately, if you're saying, well, I don't like doing that, nobody cares. This was Tom Ferry had said this years ago, and he said it to me a couple of weeks ago. He said, look, the market doesn't care whether you like things or not. The market just knows that it wants value provided to it. And the person who brings the most value to the market is going to absolutely do that. So if you don't like making phone calls, you shouldn't be making phone calls. If you don't like doing video, you probably ought to be doing video. Whatever it is success-wise you're looking for is on the other side of those fears. And when you push through those things, it's amazing what it does for your confidence. It's amazing what it does to improve your skill set. And it's amazing how the market, I know I do. I love somebody that's out there hustling. So if somebody comes and I see them hustling, I want to do business with them. I want to see what they're doing. So it's one of these where you can't worry. You cannot do this business based on what you don't like. There are certain parts of this business that has to happen. You have to make phone calls. You have to have contact with people. And so get past all of that and realize that the market doesn't care. You just have to go do it.
I was in Las Vegas with a group of friends, went down for a birthday, and I woke up in the morning and went down to one of the stores. I was in a little electronics store there, and I walked in and I was by myself. My wife didn't go, nobody. I just went in there, and there was a guy in there was so good selling that I just stopped listening to anything to do with the product, and I just started watching him talk to me. And it's like, I was so impressed with this guy. So I started buying this stuff. I bought a projector, I bought some earphones, I bought all this crap that I absolutely do not need. $4,000 worth, right? So I leave, I got this big bag of stuff, and I end up meeting our friends at the pool, and they say, what do you got? And I go, well, I bought all this stuff. And my wife goes, why? You don't need any of that. And I go, the guy was so good. I just could not buy it. I just loved it. I loved the idea that he's pitching, that he learned, he wasn't canned, but he definitely had a script. And I just loved it. And I walked away, and I don't know that I've used anything in that bag since I bought it, but I just love the guy, so anyway,
yes,
market doesn't care. So the business is growing because it's not growing because you're not growing. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, you can't pour out of an empty bucket. So are you filling yourself up? Are you becoming a better version of yourself, because you can only see your business grow at the same pace that you are personally growing. So the skills that you have today that's getting you the business you have today are probably not going to be the skills you need to go to that next level. So what is it you're doing to grow yourself personally? What is it you're listening to podcast wise, or watching video wise, or books that you're reading, or people you're surrounding yourself with? In order for your business to grow, it has to start foundationally with you growing yourself, because the more that we grow, ultimately, the more business is going to grow.
Right. Right. Like it. And then the last on your list was, I think, is there's another level of business for you. That's
listen,
that's
I don't care whether
that's your signature, right? Your signature is come here and go to the next level.
Yeah. Look, there's always another level. That's the bottom line. Is the only reason that people don't go to another level is because they stop growing. And so, whether you're the top agent in your company, or you're the brand new agent, or you're the person who's stalled and is 2 months from being out of the business, there is another level to this business for you. And that is going to show up the second that you get the mentality, that grit we talked about, to go do whatever it takes to become that person. So, I just want to encourage people. I said this a little bit earlier, but somebody's going to have their best year ever. Why not you? Why not this be the year that you take the time to become a better version of yourself, where you can serve at a higher level, that you can give better service than you've ever given? Because when you do that, I promise you that next level is right around the corner. It's just a matter of you taking the action and believing that there is more for you, because when you believe it, you start taking different actions.
Right. Right. Okay. So that's through the list there. Now, I've taken a lot of your time. I really appreciate it. And there's so much more actually to talk about, and maybe you'll be kind enough to come back and we'll do some more at another time. But I thought maybe a nice thing to wrap up with would be in the Tom Ferry video I saw you doing, you guys talked about lost mojo. And I think he asked you something about, people have gotten off track. They've slowed down, or they've gotten unmotivated or something. And how do you get your mojo back? Because a lot of people, I'm sure right now, are feeling that, right?
Yeah. And I think, this is the thing is you have to start creating some momentum. So what I suggest people do is go back. When is the last time in your business, in your life, that you felt excited, that you felt like you had momentum? Go back and study that time. Understand what it was you were doing on a daily basis. Were you working out in the mornings? Were you reading in the mornings? Were you spending time in prayer and meditation? What were you doing that gave you the positioning to do that? What's the type of business you were doing? Were you hosting open houses every week? Were you making phone calls every week? Were you geographically farming? What was it you were doing during that time that began to create that momentum? And it's not just that time when you had the momentum. What did you do leading up to that momentum? The month, 2 months, 3 months before that began to do that? Because here's the one thing is, you can't put your finger on it, but when you got momentum. And so what is it that you were doing, and taking some action on some of those things? And this is one of those, where if you will begin to do the things that you had, I'll give you a super practical one on this. Who was your favorite closing you ever had? Call that person and ask them if you've been missing them. Ask them if you could go get coffee with them or have lunch with them and just catch up. Yeah. And then just spend time with them. Because what happens is, I don't know if you've got some of these, I've got friends or clients where we cannot talk for 5 years, but the second I see them, we pick right back up where we were. Who are those people in your business where you want to go right back and pick right back up where you were in the conversation with them, because it cues your subconscious mind to get back into that frame. It cues your actions to get back into that frame. And those are the things when you're wondering, what can I do to get back into some momentum? Go back to that last place, and I promise you'll pick up that trail, so to speak, of where that momentum was, and you can start taking off again.
Yeah, it's great advice. Great advice. I remember when I first started my farming, and I got to where it was my signature basically as an agent, and people just assume you love it, and I don't know that I ever loved it. I don't know that I ever even remotely liked it. I tell people I would always rather be playing basketball. So. Anything less than basketball for me was not fun. So, or water skiing or something. So, so I had one lady. I met a lady the first day ever when I was farming, And she was unbelievably nice to me. And maybe it's my 20th door I knocked or something. And she invited me in, have some water, just could not be a sweeter, nicer lady. And I told people that there would be days when I would go out to my farm and it was hard. It was just hard to park the car and start door knocking. And I got to the point to where when I got to that mindset, I drove over to Fran's house and I parked in front of her house. I knocked on the door, exactly what you're saying to do. And she was that same nice, wonderful person all the time. She propped me up, made me feel good, gave me something to drink. I left the house and I would always go to the place I'd plan on going and start door knocking. So I think that's what you're saying. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yes. Yeah, it is. It is one of those where, listen, if you want to get excited, go back where you've been excited before. Focus on the things you're excited about, and it will spill over. That's one of those, I think, is if you can fill your own tank, it's way easier to pour on others when you've got a full tank, so to speak. So yeah, I just think you got to have energy and excitement about this business. And listen, we're not always going to have it. And when that comes, find a way to rejuvenate yourself, rejuvenate your mind, rejuvenate your energy, everything. And then go back to those places.
That's what I always called self-motivation. I never believed that anyone was just 100% self-motivated. I always defined self-motivation as recognizing where you're at. It's not a good day. And then let yourself put into practice the things it takes to pull you out. That's self-motivating.
Right.
I pat myself on the back or I kick myself in the ass and say, go do that. Let's wrap up with your thoughts. I know you and Tom talked about community and how important community was to your individual success, and it's something I definitely agree with. I think it's something that's very important today.
Yeah, no, I just think, it's the old saying, we do become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So who are those 5 people for you? Where can you upsell that, I guess you could say, where you find people that have those attributes that you want to have?
Yeah.
Let me just encourage agents that maybe, I always tell people, hey, find that agent who's doing the business the way that you want to do it and spend time with them. But let me give you a hint on that, because as somebody that gets a lot of those pitches, I guess you could say, the worst thing you can do is go to somebody that is a busy person and say, hey, I'd love to take you to lunch and pick your brain. That's just going to turn them off. Find some way that you can bring value to them. Look, you may have a skill of photography. It may be videography. It may be social media. It may be, that you write you're really good at writing. Whatever it is, go to those folks that are doing the business like you and say, hey, look, I was wanting to see, if I could help you in some way. Maybe upsize your social media. I'm not going to ask you for anything other than, hey, if I help you, I'd love for you to spend some time with me and share with me what it is you do in this area. Just go with giving value first. Yeah. If you go in and you just ask for them to give you something, you're going to turn them off so fast. But be the person that they want to have around. Become the person that is a service-oriented person. And when you do that, you're going to attract those right people.
Yeah.
If you don't have it now, build a mastermind group, become someone, go on YouTube. We live in a great time. How do I build a real estate mastermind group? Join a coaching program, get in a community of producers, and you'll become a producer.
Yep. I agree with you. Okay. Again, I've taken a lot of your time, Jimmy. I really appreciate it. Good to meet you, by the way. I knew you a little bit from the videos. So, and if I can ever be of any help or value to you, please feel free to reach out. And I wish you a ton of luck in your pursuits, and hopefully we'll see you before too long.
Absolutely. Thanks for everything, Roger. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.